Today I'm going to be making a mushroom risotto. So a risotto is a rice-based dish with any sort of vegetables, meat, fish that can be added to it. So the process I'm doing today, just using mushrooms, I'll talk you through where you can incorporate the meat, at what point you would add that in, and obviously the mushrooms I'm using, also bringing in asparagus today. You can replace that with any vegetables that you would like. So for the ingredients today, I've already prepared. I've got arborio rice, which is traditionally the rice used for a risotto, but you can use other rices. It was quite hard to get hold of this one at the moment, so you can use just a basmati. You can use long grain, just have a slightly different texture to it. The arborio has a little bit of a nutty texture to it. I'm adding in spinach at the end. I've got my onions sliced, what I call rainbow slices for pupils, just so that they can understand how to prepare them, so a little bit like a rainbow. Chopped up mushrooms, quite chunky, and I've sliced the asparagus. I've then just got garlic and some thyme from the garden, as well as some Parmesan to add on at the end, and I've got my stock cube. So what I'm going to do to start with is add some oil into the pan using a rapeseed oil. It's got a slightly higher burning temperature than olive oil, so it's really good for cooking with. Olive oil is very good for making salad dressings, pouring over salads, things like that, using with bread. But a rapeseed oil has a higher burning temperature, so more ideal for cooking. So that is heating up, and then what I'm going to do is add in the onions. We want to really caramelise those onions, release those intrinsic sugars, and allow it to have a naturally sweet flavour to it. So pop that in to the pan. Going to use a spatula or a fish slice throughout this because there's a lot of stirring to ensure it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan when we add the rice. A spoon, often you can leave the edges, you can miss it, but using a spatula means that you can actually go around and stir all of the ingredients together. So I'm going to caramelise these now for about 6 or 7 minutes. I'll return once they're caramelised to move on with the next part of the recipe. Now that the onions have been frying for about 6 or 7 minutes, they're a lovely golden yellow colour. They haven't started to brown yet, as there's going to be more vegetables to be added into there. What I'm going to do now is add in these softer vegetables with the garlic. The garlic obviously has a very small surface area, so it can burn quite quickly. So what we want to do is just add that in, just to be able to release those flavours, just take the tang away, but without making it too bitter by catching it and burning it, which obviously creates carbon to make that bitter flavour. So I'm going to add in the garlic, add in the asparagus, and add in the mushrooms. And they're just going to fry now for a couple of minutes, just to soften them. Again, there are some sugars in that asparagus, so by just frying them off, you'll just get that slight caramelisation. The mushrooms are just going to be lightly fried as well in that oil. And then we are ready to add in the rice. And what we want to do is add in the rice and then let it go translucent before we add in the stock. The stock is a vegetable stock today. Obviously you can add in a chicken stock cube if you wanted to use chicken. If you wanted to put in raw chicken, this would be the time that you would be doing it. Once you've caramelised those onions, you would add in your meat at that time that's raw, allow it to cook through for a few minutes before then carrying on and adding the soft vegetables and then the arborio rice. I'm going to add in this rice now. We're going to coat it through with the oil that's in the pan. It will go slightly translucent, and then that will be ready for us to add in the stock. So if I just stir that in, combine it with all of the other ingredients. We don't want it to really cook. We're just allowing it to absorb the flavours within the pan and go translucent. So making the stock now, I'm going to add 500 millilitres of water in with a stock cube into the jug. By the time I've done this, it'll be about ready to incorporate it, and that rice will have gone translucent. So crumbling in the stock cube to start with, and then I'm adding in 500 millilitres of water, and that makes our vegetable stock. We're going to add in the water gradually. The thing with risotto is it can be quite onerous. You can't really leave it. You have to be continuing to stir, adding in that water as it gradually absorbs into the rice. As those starch molecules start to swell, they'll take on that water, they'll take on the flavour from the stock cube, and that's how they will cook. It's called gelatinisation. So most starch, well, all starch-based ingredients, when they're heated through, they absorb the liquid, they start to swell, and that's what cooks them. But we have to stay with the pan. If you are short on time, what you can do is you can add it into a casserole dish, and you can actually put all the liquid in at the same time and pop it in the oven for about 20 minutes, and it will do exactly the same, but you won't have that stirring. So there are ways to get around making a risotto without having to stand and stir it. Really good for a mid-week dinner. So stirring all this around now, that stock will start to be incorporated, and I am gradually going to keep adding this until all of the stock has been incorporated and the rice is soft, for us to then be able to add in the spinach to wilt and to add in our thyme seasoning, and we're going to stir in some Parmesan at the end. So I'm going to continue with this now. I'll come back to you when all of the liquid has been incorporated. Now that I've been cooking the risotto for the last 16-17 minutes, most of the liquid has now been absorbed. The rice is now tender. There's still a slight bite in the centre, quite a good characteristic of the arborio rice, as I said before, a bit of a nutty texture to it and taste. So now I'm ready to incorporate the spinach. The spinach will just need a couple of minutes just to wilt down, and then that will obviously look like there's not as much in it. It looks a lot to start with, but it will reduce in size as it wilts. The other things now to start to add to this is to season it, so a little pinch of salt and pepper just to bring out those flavours, and also the thyme. So the thyme, you can use dried thyme, about a teaspoon, or fresh thyme. Just remove the leaves from the stalk, don't put the stalk in, it's quite woody. So stirring those into there now to really add in those final flavours and seasoning, and moving it around still so that it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan. If you are quite sensitive to starch, some people can find starch a little bit of an issue. One thing to do before you start the recipe is to rinse the rice. So if you rinse the rice through, because you can't drain it at the end and then rinse with boiling water, to get rid of that, if you rinse it at the beginning, that will just reduce the amount of starch that's obviously in the dish for you. So now that this has all been stirred in, we are finally adding in that tablespoon of Parmesan. You can add more once it's on the plate as well, but just stirring in a tablespoon just to really give that tangy flavour to the risotto. And that is the risotto completed, and then all you will need to do is serve it on a plate, add a little bit of a garnish, lots and lots of lovely fresh spring colours there to the dish. Adding that onto the plate, a little bit of a garnish on the top, and then you can add, again, as I said, a little bit of a sprinkling of Parmesan cheese, and that is the risotto complete.